Hello, happy Friday. Welcome to our next episode in Seek the Joy Live. We are going live today with Michelle Goodloe. She is the self-care therapist. I am so excited for this conversation because self-care is something we've been talking a lot about on the podcast in the last month. There's Michelle. Hello. Okay, Michelle, I'm going to add you. Let's see if I can do this. Here we go. It's going to be a super fun conversation. Really excited about it. Hello to everybody that is joining. Hello.
Hi, Sydney. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good on this Friday. It's good to
Oh,
see you and talk to you.
I know. I was thinking about it the other day. You were on Joy Corner like 2 years ago.
That's right. Oh my
And I don't
gosh.
think we've actually ever met face to face.
Yes, had some good mini combos, but this is our
Mm-hmm.
first official e-meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Well, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here and being part of this new series I'm doing. I'm excited for our conversation today because I feel like, self-care is not something, we talk about it a lot, but we don't really know, I think, how to innately prioritize it
hmm
and make it part of our sort of everyday life. So before we kind of dive in to this conversation, I would love it if you could tell everybody who you are, what you do, and maybe just the role self-care has played in your life, in your journey, and your practice, I guess.
Absolutely. So again, my name is Michelle Goodloe. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the states of Georgia and Illinois, and I live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
I am a private practice therapist. My therapy practice is called The Essence of Healing, LLC. And I also host a wellness resource space called gmichelle.com that focuses entirely on self-care. And I obviously love talking about self-care, but one of the main reasons I created this space was I noticed that self-care seemed really unattainable and honestly not accessible for a lot of people who are really busy, who are very
Mm-hmm.
caring, really hardworking people who sometimes feel guilty or have heard this narrative that self-care was selfish. I was definitely one of those people, and really early in my career as a social worker in particular, I burned out really quickly in my work because I wasn't taking care of myself. And the pivotal point for me in terms of my self-care journey, I had one of my child clients, I was a children's counselor at the time, noticed how burnt out I was and commented on it during one of our sessions.
Wow.
Whew. And my heart always beats a little bit faster. I always get a couple of chill bumps when I think about that moment because I notice when I'm not taking care of myself, I'm not able to do the work and be in the relationships that I love the way I want to. So,
Mm-hmm.
of the many reasons I practice self care, one of the main being I'm worth it. I'm worth taking time out for myself. Self care also helps me show up as the person that I love to be, the version of myself I feel the most proud of. So there's a lot of different components to that, to practicing self-care and why it's so important to me.
Mm. Can we talk about what you just said, though, that you are worth taking care of yourself?
Oh yeah.
We are like a generation or a group of people that puts everybody else first.
hmm
And so when it comes time to taking care of ourselves, sometimes we're stumped. We're like, excuse me, I have to do
hmm
what? Like, I have to
hmm
take care of me? That's a challenge. It's almost like a mindset shift that you have to step into, like, whoa, I'm actually worth taking care of, and I'm worth figuring out the ways
hmm
in which I can and need to take care of myself. Because I've found my self-care has shifted, it's changed over time. It's not going to be consistent either.
hmm
So I love what you said. I want to make sure we touch on it. You are worth taking care of.
hmm
Mm.
there's so many different directions we can go with that.
Yeah.
So one that I've learned, especially as a helping professional, and I really like to curate my content and the resources for people who love helping others. And for some reason, again, there's this narrative that if you take care of yourself, you're selfish, that you should be putting others in front of yourself, especially if you're in a helping field, if you are a professional helper, if you're a volunteer, an advocate, if you're a parent, if you're an
Mm-hmm.
older sibling, there's that narrative, and especially for people who identify as female, it's
Yeah.
really strong. And so I love to also embody self-compassion in this work as well. And so I always ask, especially my clients and folks that I do workshops with, tell me, where did you learn that? Where did you learn that you had to come second to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else, and that process of unlearning is how we can make self-care a more long-term commitment to ourselves. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, social media, I mean, folks have been talking about self-care everywhere, which is
Everywhere.
fantastic, right? We
Yeah.
even see it now in our marketing campaigns and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right, that's interesting. But
Mm-hmm.
what is so important to recognize is you've got to focus on what self-care looks like for you and what do you need to show up as that version of yourself you're the most proud of.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. What do you need? Not what does someone else need? What is not what's being marketed to you, not what we see
Hmm.
out there. What do you actually need? And I'm curious like what your thoughts are on this because I feel like self-care needs to be holistic. It needs to
Hmm.
be mind, body, and soul. It
Hmm.
can't just be like the things that are marketed to us, the things that we talk about, like,
Yeah.
taking a bath or all those things. It really needs to be how can you take care of your mind, your body, and your soul?
Yeah.
What has
I
it been like
agree.
for you stepping into that sort of like holistic mindset of self care and like recognizing like it needs to be so much more than what we're talking about or what we're being shown?
Sydney, you and I have this in common because I feel this very strongly too. But,
Mm-hmm.
but even before I jump into that, I like to break down self-care into two different components. I like self-care in the big umbrella term sense, I like to call it, is doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. That's like my favorite definition.
And it can
Doing
be
what,
anything. It's what
that's
you
right.
need. Yeah.
That's right. And that's the point, right?
Yeah.
If we can narrow it down a little bit more, a self-care practice is routinely identifying and addressing your needs on a regular basis, doing that in
Mm,
a routine way. So if you're doing what you need to find out, what do I need to take care of myself? What does that look like? What does that mean for me? Which is that holistic approach, right? Because there's so many different types of self-care. Some of the most common that we see, I like to give things labels so it's easier for me to understand. We see a lot of physical self-care, talking about your physical health, your nutrition needs, exercise, things like that. We
yeah.
see a lot of information about what I call personal self-care, which are the things you do to take care of your relationship with yourself. So
Mm,
pampering yourself, treating yourself, celebrating yourself. But some of the lesser known and what I think is really included in the holistic approach are things like your mental health care, your emotional and mental self care, right? How are you taking care of your feelings, your thoughts, your reactions? Or what about professional self care? What do you need to show up as your best self at work? What
yeah.
boundaries do you need to set, right? How are you adjusting your energy? What are the best ways that you like to work? We all learned this past year, there were so many different changes we all had to adapt to, but also some changes, some things that we noticed was like, wait, maybe I do like having some more time at home, and things like that. I mean, we had to adjust our self-care to identify our needs and address our needs. So the
Mm-hmm.
holistic approach, I think, is really, really great for human beings
Yes.
because we are so complex and we have so many needs that change over time. It's a really great way to take care of yourself.
Mm. Boundaries are self care. Can we talk about that for a second?
Absolutely.
Boundaries are self care, whether it's boundaries with work, boundaries with relationships, with friends, boundaries with yourself. I have
Hmm.
found though, like we struggle as humans to set those boundaries. Like, and then when you come up against a boundary, it's, ooh,
Hmm.
that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I love that you said boundaries are self care.
Yeah.
We're not talking enough about that.
No. And because a lot, you know what? It's uncomfortable sometimes to think
Mm-hmm.
about boundaries. And again, I think words mean things. So my
Yes.
favorite definition for boundaries are the limits and expectations that we set in our relationships with others and our relationship with ourselves. Our boundaries help us feel safe and help us feel balanced.
Mm.
So yeah,
That is so good. That is
listen,
so, so good.
this is why we had to chat, Sydney. We got to talk
Yes.
about these things.
Yes.
I say
Because it's so, go ahead, go ahead.
all I was going to say was I think boundaries and self-care go hand in hand.
Yes.
Like you can't have self-care without boundaries, and
No.
I hate hard and fast rules about self-care, but it's the truth. You
Yeah.
because you have to take care of your relationships. Our boundaries really do help us feel safe and balanced. And I even like to emphasize the balanced component because if you're doing too much of one thing, that means you're not doing some more of another. and something's a little bit out of whack.
100%. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier too about burnout. And when that client of yours noticed, like, you were really burned out, when we're not honoring our boundaries or even creating boundaries for ourselves, it leads to burnout. And I found at the end of 2020, and I'm curious for anybody that's tuning in and listening now or later, let us know in the chat below. And Michelle, tell me if this resonates for you too.
Yeah.
By the end of 2020, the burnout was so real.
Yeah.
Because throughout the year, I wasn't clear on my boundaries. I wasn't clear on where I stood. And then I wasn't practicing them. I wasn't implementing it. And then I used burnout as my signal that, hey, I needed to practice more self-care. Oh my God, that felt so backwards. Like, I waited until the candle was completely burned to start to take better care of myself.
Yeah.
I'm curious, anyone tuning in, do you resonate with that? Because School Psych Way says yes, and Michelle is raising her hand, because I think we wait until we hit the very end, and they're like, oh shoot, oh, we got to take care of ourselves. Oh,
yeah. And I want to break that down even further and really validate for all of us, because globally we all survived and we are surviving this pandemic, right? When we learned of this news and it started impacting multiple groups, multiple populations, countries, we had to adjust our whole way of life. And so I like to say, for each individual person, especially folks tuning in, exactly what School Psych Mind said, we were in crisis mode this year. Here's the thing, human beings can survive crisis. We get this burst of adrenaline. We move through, we can problem solve, but we're not supposed to do that all the time.
No.
It's reserved for special occasions.
Fight or flight is supposed to be when you're literally being chased, by like a tiger in the wild or something crazy. Like, it's not supposed to be every day of your life.
That's exactly 100%. Right. Exactly right. And so and if I can even take it this step further, truly what we are experiencing was traumatic for so many of us.
Yes.
Because we were suddenly pushed into this new way of life, right? We had to, it almost felt like a battle between our physical health and mental health. Because now we have to isolate ourselves. I have, my heart beats really fast for folks who had to live alone and they're extroverted or needed their people. I mean, we had to adjust to a way of life that a lot of people did not want to do, not to mention the extreme grief and loss, the systemic oppression that was taking place. I mean, it was so much that was brought to the surface for us to survive. That's why I like to use that word. We didn't just get through it. We were surviving it as human beings.
Yeah.
And that takes a huge toll on our well-being. And if I can come back to that definition of a self-care practice, we had a lot of adjustments we had to make to take care of ourselves. I saw this meme and it was like, so people who like to travel all the time, how are you doing? I always laugh so hard because I'm one of those people. I love traveling, But what if that was a significant way that you took care of yourself? Planning your vacations every quarter, knowing you were going to take those, 1 week, 2 weeks off where you could have no, stay off of social media or enjoy a tropical drink on the beach. Like that is a component of self-care. When that was removed, a lot of folks were just kind of scrambling. What am I going to do to take care of myself? And I want to validate that. I really want to validate that. That's hard.
It is so hard, and it's interesting what you're saying and what is happening right now in the chat. I got to go to the chat real quick.
Yes.
It is everyone that's tuning in, thank you. School Psych Mind says, I feel like we were in crisis mode this year, like you said, and boundaries went out the window.
That's right.
Apologies if I'm going to get your username wrong. I think it's Kaja Mary says, I can definitely relate to burnout being my wake-up call of needing more rest and self-care in general. School Psych Way, yes, the boundary line was blurred for me as well. Kayla Ann Lamar says, this is a great combo. School Psych Mind, thank you for sending it to her. Oh my gosh. The energy of this conversation is beautiful. Thank you, Coaching with Dion. I just feel like, it's so interesting. We all have experienced this over the last year. And this ability to pivot within your self-care.
Yeah.
I mean, we weren't even aware of it, I think, of needing to find new ways to take care of ourselves and new ways to pivot and adjust. And, I am somebody that has anxiety. I've had OCD my whole life. So this idea of having to be in the home, being very mindful of the ways in which I, washed my hands and what did I touch and did I always have a mask? I mean, I really had to sit down with myself and at one point say, you are safe and you are okay, and you will figure out a way to get through this. Even if that means you're enacting new boundaries for yourself, even if that means you continue to say no to those invites, even if that means, you push yourself to take that 15-minute walk because you didn't feel safe yesterday, but today we're going to see if we can do it. It's that ability to pivot and redefine the boundaries and redefine the way you can take the best care of yourself. I love what you said about the people who were traveling. It's like, yeah, so all those people, they had to find a new way to pivot and take good care of themselves too. And it's that shifting of the mindset and reminding yourself that throughout the global pandemic that we were experiencing with COVID, but every other pandemic that followed, from systemic racism to racial inequality to food inequity, everything that we've experienced, the presidential election,
Good grief.
the news, like setting new boundaries with the news.
Absolutely.
That is huge. Like being able to create that for yourself so you're not inundated with stuff coming at you, especially if you're somebody that feels like, I can only handle this in spurts. I can't be saturated with it all day.
That's it. And I want to speak to the folks who may be listening going, oh my gosh, this sounds like so much work.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And it's like, let's keep it real. It is. Taking good care of yourself is work. It takes energy and effort and trial and error and practice. That's why I love to use the word practice to describe the intention and the action plan of self-care, because we're not always going to get it right, And if we can embrace this true ideology that we are constantly growing and constantly changing, we can align our self-care practice to do the same. For instance, I liked when I was in person, pre-COVID, I loved seeing my clients in my office back to back. I could see one after the other, but that's because we had that extroverted energy. We had tea and coffee in between. We had sunshine. We could walk around. It was a different environment. When everything started going for some professions virtually, I was exhausted after each session. And I had to take a step back because I started feeling bad about that. It's like, no, this is a really important time for my work. I need to be showing up for my clients. And I had to take a step back. And my own therapist told me, wait, Michelle, now we're all going through the same things. Maybe not exactly the same, but we're having very similar experiences. This is a lot for all of us to take on. And I was like, I needed that reminder. I needed that reminder. And if I could, and I always say this to folks, if you can, if you can adjust your schedule a little bit so it's not so tight, just having some breathing room in between the work that you do, the meetings, the calls, whatever your work looks like, your body will thank you, because that's what I had to do, is create some more space. I'm home. I'm trying to adjust to doing this very sensitive work from home. I'm trying to figure out, what does it look like for me to be working at home and not at home working? Like, it was, everybody was going through that experience. So adjusting.
I relate to that so much. And I feel like everyone tuning in is relating to this too, because I remember, so in addition to the podcast, I'm a lawyer. And so we came home from an office to work from home. And the first 2 months, there were no breaks. I would go from like 8 in the morning to 7, 8 o'clock at night. And after 2 months, I was like, this is not sustainable. Like, I cannot do this. And so I make sure now to take a lunch break, give myself opportunities. I walk around the house, and I remind myself, I used to do this at the office all the time. I would walk around and visit a coworker and say hello and chat it up. And so I'm trying to do that, even if it just means I move from my office space to the kitchen, just to get a little movement in. Setting those boundaries for yourself and reminding yourself that you're working under different circumstances now. And it's okay to do a little bit more to take care of yourself. We have a question that popped up in the chat. And I want to read it. It says, coaching with Dion, question, apart from a massage or sleeping, I don't really know what self-care is for myself. And I think this brings up a really good point of, okay, we know we need to take good care of ourselves. We know it's imperative. How do I start to determine what is my self-care? And I know you've got so many tips and tools and resources, so I would love for you to share it.
I'm going to do a mini shameless plug, Sydney. I have something coming out really soon to specifically help with this type of question. So I hope folks will stay connected with me at the G Michelle to get all of these juicy details. But I have something coming up to answer this exact question. So I'm so excited.
Okay, good.
What I will start with is for anybody who's having a question about, okay, yes, first of all, getting a massage and sleeping are great things for self-care. Please pat yourself on the back for getting those things in. We need those.
I agree.
But if you're curious as to what else you could be doing to take care of yourself, my favorite journaling question for this is, what do you need to show up as your best self? I want you to just take a moment to think about, who is your best self? Did you have a time in your life where you felt you were truly the best version of yourself? What was going on during that time? What were you doing during that time? What were you creating space for? And what's different about that now? I love that. And again, the journaling question is, who is your best self? Have you ever been that person? And if you've never been that person, you've never felt like you were the best version of yourself, what does that person look like? Can you envision that person? Is that person, waking up in the morning feeling refreshed? Is that person really engaged with folks when there's opportunities to be social? Is this person standing up for themselves, or being brave, engaging in courageousness?
Yeah.
Go crazy. I have a whole journaling workshop specifically about this topic that I love doing with different groups. And it's really fun to think about what this could look like, and then start developing a self-care plan based on that. So I'll share for myself. One thing that I know, I show up as my best self when I'm funny. Like, I love humor. It just makes me happy. If I'm organized, and timely, that also lets me know I'm my best version of myself.
Yeah.
And if I'm really mindful and thoughtful with what I'm saying and what I'm doing. So I noticed that about myself, and I was like, okay, what do I need? How do I get to that person? What things help me do that? For me, in the mornings in particular, I'm a morning person, 3 different things. I've got to feed myself, okay? Everybody has different things they like to do for their physical care. I've got to eat in the morning. That's important. And it's simple, right? That's not extremely extravagant.
But so many of us skip breakfast, or we're rushing. We don't have time. I remember going to the office sometimes, be like, oh my God,
Yes,
I didn't give myself enough time. Right? So even just remembering to feed yourself.
That's it.
Huge.
Huge. And I'm going to say this to the folks. I know somebody's hearing me. If you are intermittent fasting and you notice that's infecting your mood, try something else. Just try something else. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a trainer. All I know is, if it doesn't feel right, and your body's telling you it's not feeling right, I don't think it's right. Just try something else.
Yeah.
Try eating in the morning. It's called breakfast.
But it's really about paying attention to yourself. Like, how does this make me feel? And I think sometimes this is interesting too. When we're doing something, whether it's for our self-care or in life in general, and we've been doing it for a long time, we feel like we have to keep doing it.
Yes.
Like, we have to keep, I've been doing this for a month, I've got to keep going. You actually can make a decision to do something different. You can change your mind. You can pay attention to the way something makes you feel and decide, I can't do this anymore, or I want to do more of it and I want to do it at a different time. It's okay to change your mind.
That's it. It's having that flexibility. Listen, Sydney, I know I have to keep putting my hands up because, y'all, we are in this together. I'm in the same space. And there's a difference between your self-care not working and moving through the discomfort of making some of those changes. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
Those are a big difference, because the second thing I need to make sure I'm doing well throughout the day is I need some type of physical movement in the morning. And this was so hard for me. And I like to say physical movement because everybody doesn't like formally working out, formally strength training, but do you like dance? What about, and some folks like yoga, stretching. I love YouTube University. There's all kinds of classes on there. Even just going for a walk, that I need some type of movement. I notice when I get moving, that gets my energy going in a really great way. And I feel really proud of myself afterwards.
Yeah.
And finally, I just need to journal, even if it's just 2 minutes. And this was an important practice for me as somebody who loves other people and will put other people before myself. Journaling helps me intentionally ground myself. And the simplest prompts, it doesn't have to be complicated. I will just ask myself, how am I doing? Because I have a relationship with myself. You got to talk to yourself. So I'll be like, Michelle, how are you doing today? Michelle, how is your body feeling today? Michelle, what's going well today? What needs a little bit more of your time and space? And it doesn't have to take long. But I notice if I do those three things, and y'all, it took me some time to
Yeah.
figure that out, that helps me show up as my best self. So it's about practicing, and that I have a ton of different ideas of different practices you can try on my website. Because
Mhm.
sometimes that's the hardest part. First, figure out how you want to be feeling and see what are some practices to help me get there.
Hmm. Yeah, that journey of even discovering how you want to feel goes back to what you said before. What will it take for me to feel and be my best self? Sometimes we don't even know. We're not in touch yet. So
Yeah,
sometimes it's about, like you said, taking a couple of steps back and starting with, okay, where can I start? What do I want to envision? Where do I want this to
yeah,
be? How do I want to feel? And then taking those steps to move closer to it. Mm.
that's it.
This
I'm
has
gonna throw
been,
one more thing out. Yes, one
please,
more.
please, please, please.
If this is not resonating,
Mm.
like you're like, I'm stuck. I don't know what to think about in terms of my best self. Okay. What about how are you feeling at your worst? Tell me what happens when you are feeling the epitome of burnout, or especially for caring people who are either in caring professions or caregivers, compassion fatigue. What does that look like, and what happened to get you there? That's where you need to set boundaries. If I can keep it super simple, because y'all, this is why we're here. This is why Sydney created this space, because we got to talk about the things, okay? You got to do what you got to do. So if think about what do I need to do to show up as my best self? If that's hard for you, what does it look like when you're showing up as your worst version of yourself? What happened to get you there? Now, what boundaries do you need to set so you don't get to that place? Like you were saying, Sydney, at the end of 2020, burnout was the only sign. I had to tweet that. I said, you know what? We leaving that in 2020.
I think I
Burnout being
remember
our
you
only sign.
posting that, and I was like,
Absolutely.
oh my God, preach.
Yeah.
Because we all needed that reminder. You know, it's so interesting what you said about envisioning, you know, where you feel at your worst and then wanting to pull back and away from that. I think it's about too, like imagining those moments and looking at it from a space of compassion and without judgment and just
Yeah.
saying, wow, this is how I feel when I do not feel at my best. And
Mm-hmm.
looking, like you said, like what happened? How did I get here? And then what can I do to sort of course correct? Like for
Mm-hmm.
me, if I don't get enough sleep, like if we go back to the sleep conversation from
Yeah.
10 minutes ago,
Yeah.
if I do not get enough sleep, there's a headache all day long. The ability to
Right.
focus is gone. And so the next day, I often find myself thinking, okay, what can I change about this evening? It means getting off of my laptop at 7 and not 9. It means, you know, disconnecting earlier. It means trying to, you know, turn the lights off earlier and decompress in a different way. And we can course correct. We can,
That's
you
right.
know, change what we're doing. And it's all about looking at it from a space of compassion, just like you
That's
said.
it. That's
Mm.
it.
This
Oh,
has
that's
been
dope.
wonderful. I'm so grateful for this conversation and for everybody that is tuned in. We have a couple minutes left together, so if there are any other questions for Michelle in the world of self-care, drop them in the chat below. Will you send me that link when the journaling
Yeah.
workshop is live? Because I want to share it, or the self-care workshop is live. I want to
Yeah.
share it because I think it's going to be so valuable for so many people, including
Absolutely.
me. Including me. So I
Yes.
want to share it. Where can everybody else find you, Michelle, and check out
Absolutely.
everything that you do? Because, like I said, at the very, very beginning of this, everything that you share is so valuable. I have loved being on your newsletter list. So, where can everybody find you and connect?
Yes. Thank you so much, Sydney. Well, I'm going to do another shameless plug because we've been talking about it so
There is
much.
no such thing. Just plug, plug, plug.
You know.
Tell us
So for
everything.
Good. For folks who want to learn more about their self-care needs, I have a guided journal on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com called Self-Explore, Self-Restore. Literally the things that we have been talking about today about how to discover who your best self is, what you need for self-care is why I created that journal. Again, it's called Self-Explore, Self-Restore, and it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. You guys are welcome to follow me on @the_G_Michelle with 2 L's. I talk about this beautiful topic of self-care all the time. Please sign up for my newsletter email list. Only the folks on my email list get the first of everything. The first of everything. Social media gets it next, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But you want
Mm-hmm.
to be on my email list to learn about my latest blogs, resources, and this year in particular, we are doing some very special things. Again, I want my email list to only get it first, where I'll also be sharing discounts, special opportunities through that space. You can click on the link in my bio from Instagram to get all of this good stuff. One more piece. And yes, you can go to gmichelle.com or click the link in my Instagram bio, and you will see up there it says sign up for the newsletter. That's how you can sign up, guys. Last piece too, because I just love sharing resources. I have a free self-care quiz also in the link in my bio that can also help you get started on your self-care journey. So guys, follow me on Instagram. I'm also on Pinterest and Twitter at the G Michelle.
And as someone I think who has been on your newsletter list for 2 years, I have to say, so good. Like, so good. The resources, the information, everything really does live there before it goes on social. I can attest to that. So, Michelle, this was so much fun. Thank you to everybody that joined this conversation. I love just I felt like we were all in a room together having this convo. It wasn't just you and me, it was everybody who was here. And I think, we're not talking enough about self-care in this way, about really it being mind, body, and soul, about being holistic, about really knowing that you are of value. We need to prioritize ourselves and take care of ourselves in this way. So you and I are going to have to do this again.
Absolutely.
We are, because this was so much fun. So I can't thank you enough.
Sydney, thank you for having me. Thank you for the space you're creating. I'm so glad we could stay connected even after these couple of years. So I can't wait till our next combo.
Me too. I'm so grateful. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you to everybody that tuned in. This will live on our IGTV. So if you want to check it out again, go back and find all of the amazing resources that Michelle listed. It's all going to be there. This is our new series, Seek the Joy Live, where I go live once a month, but it's actually been more than once a month, which I've loved, with incredible people like Michelle to talk about topics that we're talking about, I think in a new and refreshing way. So make sure to follow Seek the Joy podcast so you can check out our next episode. And Michelle, thank you so much again. This was so much fun.
Thanks,
Have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.